Hi, I'm Victor Margiotta, and this is the Community Show. I have my cousin, Carli Clement, on the show today. She has hydrocephalus, and we're going to raise awareness to the community. We're going to talk about, a little program that she started to help raise awareness, and she's going to talk about the disease and tell us about it. So this is an opportunity for us to get involved and to help people with this disease. So thank you, Carli, for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. And first, let's talk about what is hydrocephalus.
Okay, so hydrocephalus is an abnormal accumulation of cerebral spinal fluid that builds up inside the brain in the ventricles.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone that has hydrocephalus, we can't get rid of the fluid on its own. So, like, you have an aqueduct, and everyone has an aqueduct, and from there, the fluid just drains, and then it gets reabsorbed into your bloodstream. But for the majority of people that have hydrocephalus, there's a blockage somewhere, and that's what causes like the pressure to build up and different symptoms to happen.
And this happened when you were a baby.
Yeah, I was born with it.
So
I had my first surgery like a week before I was 5 months old, and that was when they inserted my first shunt,
mm-hmm.
which is literally like little plumbing, and it's a little tube that goes inside the ventricles, and then it's attached on the outside of the skull to a valve, and the valve regulates the amount of flow, and it drains into either your stomach or your
mm-hmm.
heart, and from there it just gets reabsorbed into your bloodstream.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How did they figure out that you had it?
So I like couldn't hold down formula when I was
mm-hmm.
younger, and I was sleeping way too much,
Right.
and I would just cry a lot, and my parents knew that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
So they had brought me to the doctor, and several doctors told them that they were crazy and that nothing was wrong. And then they found another doctor, and
mm-hmm.
they decided to do an ultrasound, and that was when they saw that my ventricles were enlarged, and
Right.
that's when they diagnosed me with hydrocephalus.
Now, why is it so hard to figure out?
Well, for babies, there's
mm-hmm.
so usually they can find it in utero now,
Yeah.
which is great because they can shunt you right after birth.
Right.
But sometimes it's just, the doctors are measuring your head every day, and they'll notice it from there. But I think because not many people know what it is, they're
mm-hmm.
not looking for it in every birth, and that could be dangerous.
Yeah. How many people have this disease?
So in America alone,
mm-hmm.
there's about 1 million people.
Okay.
Ranges from birth all the way to elderly. We see a lot now the soldiers coming back from combat get diagnosed with it from traumatic brain injuries, and that's causes a whole different issue for them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone,
Yeah.
and it does. It happens all over the world.
And with older people, again, it's hard for them to figure out what it is.
It's often misdiagnosed as Alzheimer because of the symptoms that it would cause. Your gait, unsteady gait, memory issues, not swallowing correctly, forgetting things. Just, doctors will push it off and say, "I'm sorry, it's Alzheimer's or
yeah.
Dementia,"
Yeah.
and then it takes someone to actually do an MRI, and
mm-hmm.
they'll see the ventricles are enlarged.
Yeah.
And if you put a shunt in those people, they'll improve drastically. And
yeah, immediately, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing to see someone who was having a really difficult time walking get a shunt inserted and be able to walk perfectly fine after.
Wow. Now that so many people can be diagnosed with it, is it one of the things they check when a baby's born? Do they make that like one of the checks?
It's not usually something that you'll look into unless maybe
Something.
someone in your family has it,
mm-hmm.
or cousin, relative. Then you'll kind of be a little more cautious to look for it.
Yeah.
But it's not something yet that we can detect by doing a blood sample or something like that.
Right.
And it's not something that if you do like an amnio, they can't figure it out from that either just yet. There is a lot of research going on at Yale University. Dr. Christopher Kale he has a lab there that sets up to do a lot of research and trying to find a genetic cause to it.
Mm.
So currently he's found like 3 genes, I think, that are more of a cause for why the hydrocephalus happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How long did that shunt last, your first one that they put in?
My first one lasted like 3 months, and then they had to do 2 more revisions within a month of each other. And then I was on my way up to New York from Florida, and we were in the car, and I started to show symptoms that my shunt was failing. And they called my neurosurgeons down at Miami Children's, and they told them to go to NYU and to meet with doctors there. And we had went straight from, we were passing over the Delaware Memorial Bridge. My parents drove me to, NYU. They placed a shunt that night, or they revised the shunt, and that one lasted me 8.5 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was great. Growing up, I really didn't know much.
Right.
I didn't think I was different from anyone.
Yeah.
And then the day of my 10th birthday, it kind of all started again when I woke up with headaches and I was throwing up, and at first my mom's like, "Oh, you're probably just excited. You're 10 years old," and fortunately it turned out not to be that.
Yeah.
And then since that day, I've had 78 more revisions.
Oh my goodness.
So it's kind of been nonstop since I was 10.
Yeah. Now, are some of the major and then some of the minor, or what's the degree of the operations?
So it kind of depends on what part of the shunt is broken or it failed. There's the catheter that goes inside the brain, so that one's obviously more risky to have to fix.
Yeah.
The valves are, I wouldn't call it every operation that they do is a major operation, but those are more simple if you're just, replacing a valve or, monitoring pressure or one of those operations. I also have a second catheter that goes towards my brainstem in the back, and that drains the fluid around my brain because my brain all of a sudden decided that it couldn't communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So I needed 2 catheters, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
And that always causes issues with, which one isn't working and why isn't it working. So we know if the catheter in the back fails, I'll have a lot of issues with vision. And, if they pull fluid off, usually with, like a needle, and they tap the shunt, I'm able to see, and that's kind of how they know something's not right pressure-wise.
Yeah. What is the mortality rate?
So I believe, it's dropped drastically.
Yeah.
They started doing shunts in like the 1960s was like the first shunt that was created. And before that, the mortality rate was extremely high, around 90%. And now, thank God, it's dropped to below 5. And, it all depends on the severity of the case, obviously where you are in the world for treatment, and just, your makeup.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank God that, they finally figured it out, and it's helping people. Now, you got involved. You started your own little program.
Yeah, Carli's Angels.
Carli's Angels. What did it take to get this thing off the ground?
So in 2014, I was very active with the Pediatric Hydrocephalus Foundation, and I met with tons of families when I went to a conference in Washington, and I just saw how it affected so many people. And I, didn't agree 100% with a lot of the other organizations that were out there, with regards to where money and funding were going and just how they went about raising awareness. And I wanted to be more of a positive voice for patients and families, and that's when Carli's Angels kind of came about. And we started. That's kind of our tagline, to send to cure hydrocephalus, and we just want to be a loud, positive, active voice. And we're focused on any money that we do raise goes straight to either the PHF, and that will go towards different research projects, or like this last time we did a softball charity game, we raised about $2,500, and we gave that straight to actually my neurosurgeon because he and his brother are creating a new shunt. So we wanted to make sure that they had their funding. Yeah.
Cool. So how important is it for people with the disease to get together and talk about,
I think it's really helpful because, some days you'll feel like you're alone and, someone doesn't understand, or if, someone says something like, ignorant or rude or however about the condition. I think it's helpful to have someone that knows exactly what you're going through. So I think, having a community that truly understands you is extremely important.
Now, I mean, obviously you went through a lot, but talk about what your family has gone through.
Honestly, I don't think I could ever imagine if it was my child that had something like this. I mean, my parents, my grandparents, everyone have just been so amazing, and they're all so supportive and loving, and they're always there no matter what. There were a few surgeries last year in January that the doctors weren't sure I would make it out of. And he had told my mom, he didn't want her to be alone. So they had called my grandparents, and they came straight to the hospital and sat with her. And they're always there to help if we need a ride to a doctor's appointment, or someone to sit with us in the hospital. Like, I think having a big family is something that's really, really helpful here, and it's nice that everyone's there to help.
Well, we better say hi to Frank and Angela and tell them how much we love them.
Yes, definitely.
And I mean, they're great. They're great to all their grandkids, and they give so much support to their kids, and But you have the youngest grandchild now.
Great grandchild Juliet.
Juliet, I know.
Yeah.
I got to get over there. I haven't met her yet.
You really, really should. Yeah,
I know.
she's so cute.
Yeah, I'm hooked on golf though. So they even have indoor golf. So it's like.
Oh my gosh.
Speaking of golf, that's one way people can raise money.
Yeah, golf outings.
And what other fundraisers have you had? I know you did the softball.
Yeah, we've done softball games in the past. We've had a walk done in Yorktown Heights. We worked with the town to do that. That was about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We did, what else? We've done dress down days. So some of the schools, are required to wear a uniform, and we were able to do dress down days where the child and the family would pay like $5, and that money would go towards the PHF, and they'd be able to dress down for the day. So we've done that with Kennedy Catholic in Somers, and we've done it with St. Patrick's in Yorktown. Okay,
so who do we know that goes to this school?
So we did it when Jack was in St. Pat's.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah. And then we did Kennedy while I was there, and now that he's there, we do that. We continue to do it there.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard on the family. I mean, how do you think it affected him? I know sometimes vacations got a little messed up.
I think it's very hard, and it's really sad to know that he has to go through this just as much as I do.
Yeah.
And I've missed his birthday one year. We were in the hospital having surgery. His basketball games. Like anytime that I can be there to support him, I love to be there.
Yeah.
And if I'm not there, it's really upsetting that this has to come in the way of that.
Yeah.
But he's so great, and he's always there to make you happy, and he just knows it's no one's fault, but he's
a good little brother.
Little brother.
We got to thank him too.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Thanks, Jack. And so you went down to Washington D.C. and you did a speech.
Yes. So in 2014, I was invited to give a speech to Congress, and it was to work on a caucus there for more funding and research to happen. They had an older person speak on behalf of normal pressure hydrocephalus. They had a soldier come back from war and spoke on his challenges with it, and then I was there to represent the teenagers and children that have it.
So we can go online and see the speech,
yes,
right?
It's also on YouTube. Yeah.
It is on YouTube. And how about a website for Carli's Angels?
So our website right now is www.carlisangels.org.
Okay.
And from there, you can see all our fundraising efforts, different things that are going on. We're trying to work out a news feed, just newsletter. It will also I think there's a link there that will send you to the Pediatric Hydrocephalus Foundation. And from there, you can see where all your donations will go, which I think is really, really important. So you see that your money is going to research as opposed to in someone's pocket.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many causes out there to get involved in.
Yeah.
Talk about who you compete with.
Well, I wouldn't say that we're competing because I think it is difficult being that September is National Hydrocephalus Awareness Month. There's also Childhood Cancer Month, which is in September, so it's kind of gets overshadowed often, and it's something that we want to just bring more awareness to, so that way one day we can have more fundraisers that will raise more money, because without the funds, unfortunately, you can't look into better treatment options and hopefully one day a cure, since we don't have one yet.
So you do some work with the kids.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
I love it.
Yeah.
I babysit some special needs children, and Asher has hydrocephalus as well, and he has a lot of other medical issues, and I love to be there for him and support him and his family. And I think it's really important that, his mom called me the other day and was like, Asher has a headache, like, I don't know what to do, can you explain to me what he's feeling? And it's something that I wouldn't say like I'm proud of, but it's nice to know that, he's not alone and I'm not alone, and, everyone else in that community is, going through the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's what the beauty of support groups, people that
Yeah.
deal with addiction and alcoholism, they go to these programs.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is it's all about, that people understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
And, you could talk about these things, and it's fantastic. So what are you going to do for school now?
So I was at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, and then unfortunately after a lot of the surgeries that happened last year, my doctors weren't comfortable with me being that far away just yet. So right now I'm at Westchester, and I'm doing some core classes there. I was on the pre-med track, so right now I'm focused more on psychology and neuroscience. And from there, I'm looking into hopefully going into med school. I'm doing an internship currently with neurosurgeons at Westchester Medical Center.
Cool.
And I love that, where, I'm constantly learning about not just hydrocephalus, but, other ailments that, affect children and adults.
Yeah.
And it's something that has really sparked a passion in me.
Yeah, well, I mean, with all those surgeries and being in the doctor's office and the hospital, it's almost like you got an education in the medical field.
Yeah,
so.
the doctors, like one of the doctors says that I'm like his shunt expert, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd wear that title proudly, but if I can help, that's great.
Now, what's going on up in Albany with Nita Lowy? And
well, a few years ago, we had went with them and spoke to them, different people in their office, just to see if they would join our caucus. And I believe Chuck Schumer, his name is on our bill. Nita Lowy, I don't think she was able to get very involved with, just because she was more local.
Yep.
But we have, Chuck Schumer, and then we also spoke with Christian Gillibrand's team. So they were like more to drive the force and kind of get the bill passed. There were a lot of other senators as well that were involved in it. And, obviously the more you have, the better it is to get it passed.
Of course.
So.
And it's all about funding.
Yeah.
You can't do anything without money, good or bad, or
Unfortunately,
indifferent, whatever. But, I know people in Yorktown like to get involved.
Yeah.
So talk about some of those people.
So when we did the walk, we were able to go around town and kind of ask different vendors that we would have. So we'd ask for a donation, and they could set up their booth and sell their services. We did that with different like jewelry groups around town. We did it with just the town in general was able to. They were extremely supportive. We had a dance team come by from a local dance studio that danced for us. It was great because the whole town was so helpful and just really wanted to see us succeed.
And the superintendent?
Superintendent, yep,
she
came
was
by.
involved.
Yeah, Michael Grace was great with that. So we were able to speak on his Grace Notes special about it, and kind of just let everybody know what was going on in town for that.
That's awesome. So what are some of the other things? I know you like to bake, and I know you were kind of inspired by my mother.
I love baking. It's something that I love to bake, and I'll bring it to friends or I'll bring it to family, and it's kind of like my coping mechanism. Like if I'm having bad headaches or whatever, I'll do that. I was also a really, really big swimmer, so I swam throughout high school. And I feel like more free when I'm in the water, so that's always something that I look to do. And then honestly, like, I love children, so if I, babysit or, just hang out with like Juliet or, just anything like that, I love to be around them. And
well, I think, coming from a big family and being around kids, you're not nervous around them,
Right.
Which makes a difference. You see that they're, they can bounce off the wall or whatever, it's fine. Not that you don't want to bounce them off the wall too many times, but, for me, growing up in a family of 10, I mean, my parents, they just loved having a baby in the house, so they just kept having babies, And I know for me as a baby, I must have been hugged and kissed a million times, and it's the best feeling, being in a big family.
It really is,
And, you hear a lot of people that are looking for family, that aren't connected, and this is a great thing for you to do, to go to these kids and help. And it brings you a lot of joy.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of children, unfortunately, that are, in the foster care system right now that have hydrocephalus, and, their parents have labeled them, that they don't think they have a life, and that's definitely not okay in my mind.
No.
I think every child deserves to be loved, and, the boy that I babysit for, Asher, he has a sister, Quinn, and his mom, Allie, is a foster parent as well, so she fosters 2 children that have hydrocephalus right now as well. And one child, had no quality of life whatsoever, and with the right therapies and feedings and everything, he's beginning to thrive. And it's just so amazing to see like what love can really do for these children. And it's very sad to think that, a parent would label their child or not think that they're, good enough for them just because of that. I mean, we're not monsters.
No. Well, it is a basic need, and that's why families do so well, because they're not afraid to say "I love you" and to be, told "I love you" back, and everybody needs it. It's a basic thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but it is so true that everybody needs love. All you need is love.
Absolutely.
All right. So what's next on the agenda? Are you going to be able to go away for school, or are you?
That's kind of what I'm pushing towards. I'd love to go, Florida, maybe somewhere warm, California, far away. I'm looking into all my options right now to see, which school would fit best.
Yeah. And you would have to find a doctor.
Yeah, I'd need to find someone there that I guess I could use if I needed to. While I was away in Sacred Heart, I had a doctor up at Yale, and he was just there more for an emergency if something were to happen, and then they could bring us back to Westchester. But I guess being further away, obviously you're going to need a neurosurgeon in that state as well. But I mean, shunts have the highest failure rate of any medical device out there. So unfortunately, 50% fail within the first 2 years that they're placed. And then by the time they're 10 years old, there's a 98% failure rate. So you're pretty much guaranteed to have more than one shunt revision in your life. And, to us, that's not okay. There's not enough treatment options besides a shunt. You can do an endoscopic third ventriculostomy, but not everyone is a candidate for it. And that's where, you try to make sure that you're not dependent on the shunt, and they're able to make little holes in the floor of the ventricle inside your brain. And from there, usually the fluid can just, flow out naturally and get reabsorbed. But again, not everyone's a candidate for it. So I think we need to find better treatment options where, the valves won't break, they won't, malfunction while you're at a concert, they won't, we have had some improvements where you can, with programmable shunts, where we can regulate the amount of flow depending on, if you're laying down, sitting up, more active, less active. But those are also, they're changed by a magnet. So, we went to a concert, and unfortunately that didn't work well for the one we had, and it fried the valve, and we were in surgery the next week. So it's kind of like, it's not an okay treatment. They all have their flaws.
Yeah. So it's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life.
Yeah, unless we find a cure, unfortunately, everyone's going to have to deal with what they have.
How was it trying to, I know you missed a lot of school, and talk about some of those feelings.
Honestly, I think it was very hard because, you weren't there with your friends all the time, so it was difficult. You felt like you were being left out. You weren't there to go to swim practice that night with your friends, or to go to, the football game that night, or, go out that weekend because you're recovering from brain surgery, or, you're, have a bad migraine and you're not sure if it's your shunt or if it's just a migraine. So it was very hard, especially in high school, where, I have a very select few of really, really good friends that are there, and, they really understand everything, and they were there to keep me in the loop, and it was great in that sense. But then, I'd come back to school, and a lot of times, with these new surgeons, they would shave the whole left side of my head. So when I would come back, some people would stare at you weird, some people would ask, what the heck happened, and, that would be a long story to, explain to someone in high school, like a sophomore, oh, well, I just had brain surgery, but...
Or I just became a punk rocker. And
I decided to do that. I got in a fight. Yeah, so, it's difficult in that way where it kind of shelters you a little bit, but,
Yeah.
that's something that you have to not let it affect every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And, you want to be as normal, and you can be as normal as, can be. And that's always been one of my things where, I don't want to be labeled as, Carli has hydrocephalus.
Yeah.
I think it's more, yes, I'm Carli, and yeah, I do have a shunt, but that's not everything about me.
Right.
And I think that was really something that I learned more in high school when I was, swimming and, active in a lot of other things where it wasn't just thinking about that.
Yeah. Now, those experiences help you to share with the kids that you work with, too.
Yes, so especially with my internship right now, I think it's very helpful that, when I go in with the doctors, if, someone comes up and says, my child just had their shunt placed, what do I look for? What do I, what is my child feeling or going through? And, it's something that my neurosurgeons will, ask if it's okay if they tell them their story. And, I'm there to offer support. I'm there to tell them, look, I've had this many surgeries and, I'm still in school. I'm still, doing different things and babysitting and working. And, it's not a death sentence. It's not something that you have to really worry about with your child. Yes, it's going to be a part of them for, the rest of their life, but it's them. And, that's what makes them so special.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, we got to get involved in Carli's Angels. What are some ways we can get involved?
So on our website, www.carlisangels.org, we have different fundraising links. So, from our softball game that we did, also if they go on to www.hydrocephaloskids.org, that's the PHF website.
Yeah.
And they'll post, anything that they're doing. So they do different walks. They have different chapters throughout the United States. So each state actually has a few directors that lead it, and each state does like their own fundraising opportunities. So there's different things to get involved with. Honestly, I think it's more just spreading awareness and letting people know what it is. And, I've had people ask me, oh my God, is it contagious? Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to cough on you and you're not going to get it.
Yeah, right.
It's something that you're born with, and, it's not that. I've had people, ask me some very strange things about it. And I think, if, people actually understood what it was, maybe that would help, with the awareness, obviously, and people not thinking that, oh my gosh, you have that, or you're a monster, or something along those lines. And it's not always the case.
All right, we better say hi to your father and thank him for everything he does.
Oh yeah, my dad. My dad does a lot with it. So he really was the driving force behind Carli's Angels, and he always wanted me to see, having hydrocephalus as more of a blessing than a curse. And, with his help and my mother's, of course, I was able to get Carli's Angels going. And, he's come to Congress with us, and he's, done a lot of things with the walk. And my mom was the same thing. Like, she's always there every hospital stay. She's with me, sleeping in the room with me, and, talking to the doctors and making sure that everything is the way it should be. And, without both my parents, I don't know where I'd be, because they really are amazing. And I could never thank them for everything they've done. And, working with the doctors that I'm working with now, I see that, some children with hydrocephalus, their parents just abandon them. And, I think that they'll put them in a home or whatever, and some of the nurses that take care of them don't even know that, they have a shunt or that they have hydrocephalus. And it's heartbreaking to see that, a parent could do that to their child. And I, that day that I found everything out, I texted my parents and I was like, thank you so much for not giving up on me. Like, thank you for, showing me that, I'm good enough, and, I don't have to stop. And I think that's really good.
Awesome. All right, so thank you, Kevin. We love you, and I love you.
I love you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm Victor Margiotta. This is the community show, and if you can get involved, get involved. This is a great opportunity, so thanks for watching.